Well, that's the thing. I mean, we're on the cusp of the Tory party conference. I dare say you'll be covering that in some depth at the Telegraph. And it's a very important one, isn't it, for the Tories? Because, you know, we saw, talking about green shoots, we saw one sort of green shoot coming up Downing Street when Rishi Sunak pushed the net zero stuff into the background and said, we're not going to do it in 2030. We might be doing it a little bit later on, but a lot of us hope that he won't do it at all. But they're going to need more green shoots if they're going to have to try and sort of offer us a reason to vote for them again. One of them could be tax, but we hear this morning that the tax take is going to increase massively in the next couple of years from an Institute of Fiscal Studies policy document. And despite collecting more taxes than ever, the services that we get are getting worse.
Yes, that's right. I think that the Tories in the last few weeks have managed to identify and establish some dividing lines between them and the Labour Party on net zero, on immigration. They have forced Keir Starmer out into the open. They have forced Labour to set out what their position would be on these massive issues where they elected into government. And what have we seen? Actually, a narrowing of the Labour lead in the polls as a consequence of this. So if I were a Tory strategist, I would be looking for other opportunities just like that, where you can put clear blue water between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party and really force the Labour Party to set out their stall on some of the most thorny issues in British politics at the moment. But when you look at the overall state of our fiscal position, Mike, it's not especially favourable. Like you say, the IFS are now warning that we're going to have the biggest taxes since records began, that taxes will amount to 37% of national income by the next general election. Many people suspected that this might be the case by around 2027, 2028, but actually it's sooner than that. And the Tories have responded by saying that they're bringing down inflation, that erodes people's pay packets, and they're right to do so. Though, of course, monetary policy is in the hands of the Bank of England, not the Conservative Party. And what the government need to be doing is identifying ways that they can bring down that tax burden, not least given we're still in a cost of living crisis. And for many people in this country, the highest cost of living is the tax that they pay. And like you say, Mike, they're paying more and more into the Treasury coffers, and public services seem to be getting worse and worse. Look at the state of the NHS with a backlog that just keeps getting larger and larger. Well over 7 million people on waiting lists for treatment. On our healthcare service, look at the welfare bill that just keeps spiralling out of control. And now there's this dominant narrative, because we've got unfavourable demographics, because we've got an ageing population, that it's a necessity that the welfare bill will go up and up. Well, you know, I happen to think that that's not the case at all. And there are certainly ways of bringing it down. But this is incredibly awkward for the Conservative Party. You know, they're under a lot of pressure now to find ways of bringing in some tax cuts before the next general election. They're running out of time to do so. They've got an autumn statement in November, a budget in March. And one of the problems is that there's expectation that they will lower income tax by 1 or 2p, which means that even if they introduce this costly measure, people aren't really going to reward them for it. So they've got to find other areas to cut taxes.